position appointments. 11 municipalities will also be supported to institutionalize performance management system. 11 municipalities will also be supported with the municipal staff regulations, and this is Chapter 2 staff establishment. The compliance reports will be produced on a quarterly basis, and this is on service delivery, and the annual report on service delivery will be produced, and 9 municipalities will be monitored on the implementation of the indigenous policies. There will be 4 compliance in the 4 quarters. 4 compliance reports will be produced on the following acts, and 9 municipalities will also be guided to comply to the MPRA. And a report on the compliance of municipalities to the section 131 of the FMA will be produced, and also the implementation of the Back to Basics program will be monitored on a quarterly basis. There will be 4 IGR structures that will be supported to remain functional according to the IGR framework. I'm moving to development planning. Under the integrated planning and spatial governance, the Gauteng Spatial Development Framework will be implemented, and the GCR planning house business case will be developed. And 11 municipalities will be supported to comply to have legally compliant IDPs, and five districts and metros will be monitored on the implementation of their one plans, and the Citibank DDM hub will be established. There will be 21,000 work opportunities created through the community workers program. Under disaster management, the level 3 plan will be completed, and 5 municipalities will be supported to maintain functional disaster management centers. The next one is just a repetition. And 50% of municipalities will be supported with to access early warning systems, and we're targeting 3 municipalities. So the 100% is 6 municipalities. Lesedi, Western, Influen, and Midva will be supported with fire and rescue services, and this is support on equipment and vehicle. And 9 municipalities will be monitored on the implementation of infrastructure delivery plans, and 5 districts will be monitored on the spending of the national grants. And 9 municipalities will also be supported with technical skills, capacity through the multidisciplinary teams, and this is supporting on engineering and town planning. 9 municipalities will also be supported on the implementation of the water security interventions, and also they will be monitored on the adaptive responses to climate change. And the focus will be on water conservation and demand management. Influen will be supported to implement the online monitoring system for large power users and commercial users. And municipalities will also be supported to develop implementation plans for the approved NERSA tariffs. I'll be moving to traditional leadership. 2 traditional councils will be supported to comply to the legislative prescripts, and 100% of the succession claims that will be received will be, and they were planning to hold 2 training programs to strengthen collaboration between local government and traditional council. Thank you, Chair.
HOD, who's
Yeah.
next? I know we have 2 more.
Chair, can they just load the presentation, because it still falls from there. It's the appropriation bill that deals with the finances, where the CFO will talk. That's where we are, and then we'll conclude with a response
What
to questions.
slide number, just to be sure? 39, got it. Slide 39, members.
Morning, Chair and honorable members. I'll continue the presentation from here. I think the slide basically reiterate the issues we mentioned in the past, which are also public knowledge. We started the financial year on the same fiscal framework, but the most important aspect of it was fiscal consolidation and the old story of no new money. And as a matter of fact, the tone from PBC is for all those projects which are presented, we need to demonstrate that reprioritization will not be enough to afford new priorities and before any consideration for additional funding is made. In the current financial year, we received a total allocation of 634 million, of which is a 5% increase from the previous financial year. And again, the additional 5% increase is meant to cover the cost of living adjustment. As we all know, that there was an agreement at bargaining council. Again, we reprioritize to look at three things to assist human settlement in the backlog, assist municipalities in payment with payment arrangements as far as ESCOM and rainwater accounts are concerned, and then assist municipality to reduce their water and electricity losses and support Merafung and Western District Municipality in financial recovery in particular. I think the first slide was skipped before this one. The previous slide, please. Okay, next. The allocation of the budget in this regard, we want to demonstrate that there's no different structural allocation from the one we had. For example, in program one, the total budget allocation is 165 million, which was the previous financial year, and currently is 162 million, meaning that there's a reduction of about 3 million. And again, if you look at in administration, Office of the MEC still get 3% of the total budget for program one or support, of which 97% goes to corporate services. And corporate services include Office of the HOD, include corporate services as a unit. It include legal services, it include finance, it include IT, and which are the core support of the department to function. Program two, the total program is allocated 276 million, was allocated 276 million 463 the previous financial year, and then this year they receive an additional budget, but or to about 306 million 352. Again, we need to emphasize that the reason why it would seem as if this program got an enormous amount of money is because the program CDW reside in this program, and then majority of staff members in the department remains CDW. So when you take into consideration the 5% increase in cost of living, it means a lion's share will go to program two. So now in program two, last year, municipal administration got 18 million. They still got 18 million this year. Again, which is 6% this year of the total budget allocation of the program. Municipal finance, they got 9% last year. They're getting 13% in the current financial year for reason I mentioned during the fiscal consolidation. And then program three, they got 70%. No, public participation, they got 70% last year, and this is 65%. It's simply because in the previous year we used to get an earmarked allocation for voter and civic awareness campaign, which additional allocation or earmarked allocation we didn't receive for the current financial year. And capacity development, they got 8% and they got 11% in the current financial year. And then municipal performance, 6% last year, and the amount remained 6% in the current financial year. And program three, the total allocation is 148 million, which was increased by about 2 million to 150 million. And the structure is land use management got 7% last year. This year got 6%. IDP coordination got 13% last year and 22%, primarily because there were additional funds which were made available for spatial development. And then disaster, they got 56% of the budget allocation in the program. It was reduced to 40% in the current financial year. And municipal infrastructure, the allocation was increased from 24 to 32%. All in all, this particular program 3 received an additional allocation of 2 million. So again, it goes back to what we said to say we reprioritize within the existing allocation instead of getting an additional allocation of funds. Next. This is the last program, program 4. Their allocation was 20 million. It was reduced to 19 million 644. And then the structure last year, traditional institutional admin got 56% of the budget. It was reduced to 53. Last year, traditional resource got 33 and was increased to 37. And then rural development facilitation, they had nothing this year. It was they got 3% allocation, and then additional traditional land admin 9% last year, and then it was reduced to 8%. But all in all, the budget allocation for the program was reduced from 20 million to about 19 million in the current financial year. Next. And I'll stop here, but I believe from here it will be the responses to the question which members raised. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson, once again. Chair, I think what's important that you should note from the budget is the work that we are doing in municipalities, which is in under Program 2. It is comprising of the biggest portion of the budget. And although Program 4 is the smallest portion of the budget, it is also a core program in the department. And Program 1, which is your program dealing with administration, to ensure internal efficiencies, that budget has been reduced. And looking at where we are, it does comprise of the smallest portion of the budget that deals with the administrative issues in the department. Jay, if we just looking at the questions from the research analysis, important to note that the question was posed on the bursaries that was allocated to learners with disabilities. Chair, we must note that the department do not go out on its own advertising campaign to attract learners with disabilities, specifically for bursaries. The Gauteng City Region Academy, the GCRA in the Department of Education, is entrusted with that responsibility to engage with higher education institutions, engage with the Center for People with Disabilities, engage with the disabilities unit in the presidency to get learners. And what we have done, we have engaged with the GCRA, and they have furnished us with the details, and hence we have made an additional budget available from our side to offer bursaries to learners with disabilities to further their studies. So that process, it's a rigorous process undertaken by the GCRA, and they are dealing with that process. We have just decided, Chair, that we have not done too well with people with disabilities in the past, and we needed to do something as a department. Chair, on the next slide, the question on the research studies that we were looking at, what was important, Chair, is that we have set aside about 1.5 million for the research studies. And Chair, going out on an additional service provider request for quotation process would be a time-consuming process. The provincial government has already engaged and signed agreements with the GCRO. There's agreements in place with the CSIR, and we thought we can leverage on those skills. It is research-based institutions, and for us, it will assist us. Chair, to conduct research, we do have a smaller component in the department that deals with research and development, but to do research and to analyze research, to use those research tools, it is an expensive exercise, and you should be a research-based institution if you want to have such tools. So for us, it is not useful to have those tools, but we have a smaller component that do assist in the department. Chair, we have conducted a comprehensive study, as we have indicated, but then also the recent study that was undertaken by the Premier and the team to Finland, we have also used that as a basis to take into account what we have done insofar as our study on coalition government as well. And Chair, there may be a need for us going forward, depending on what the outcomes is of the study, to take further tours, because we believe, Chair, if you look at the current state of coalition government, you elect a mayor at 2 o'clock, at 4 o'clock there is already a motion of no confidence. So there is a need for us as a department to strengthen that area within the governance framework in municipalities. So at this stage, the work has been finalized. It should be going through the internal process. We should be tabling it at the Executive Council in the next cycle in June, and we will then be ready to table the report here. Chair, on question 3, the request was that we need to report on the 6 municipalities and what would those powers and functions be. So what we're saying, the 9 pillars are indicated there. Those are the 9 pillars that will be applicable to the study. But what we're also saying, Chair, we are in the process of appointing a project manager. The first RFQ process, if not delivered the desired results, the companies that we wanted to appoint or the project manager, it was not reputable. So we felt that just appointing anybody will not give us the desired results. Let's rather follow a further process to see how we can get the best possible person in to assist us. And then going forward on the next slide, Chair, the question on the DDM plan, I think the metro system of government, if you want to look at the work of DDM and the principal objective surrounding that, it's to ensure integrated planning. And with the metro system of government, if you're looking at that, it should give you a better sense of creating a better plan that gives you a sense of the entire economic and social situation in a municipality. So we believe that that could be a system that would expedite the one plan. Chair, on the next slide, the issues relating to functional municipalities and the impact on service delivery. I think 3 municipalities in particular was affected. We know the city of Ekurhuleni was affected because the report of the AG was delayed. Importantly, for the city of Johannesburg, the adjustment budget was delayed, not the adjustment budget, but in the city of Tshwane, the adjustment budget was delayed. And then, of course, in the city of Joburg, the discussion surrounding the loan to finance some of the key municipal operations was key. But Chair, despite the engagement that we have resuscitated the MEC Speakers Forum, we have resuscitated the MEC Mayors Forum, but then MEC on his own engage with speakers and mayors on a bilateral basis to ensure that we deliver and we unblock some of those challenges. On question 5, Chair, the main issue was regarding the mediation services that we have adopted. Whilst we have the panel that is in the Gauteng Provincial Treasury, none of the municipalities have requested these mediation services. But of course, internally, we have the technical teams, we have the regional support teams, where there is a need to engage with municipalities. But depending on the need for mediation and the specialist nature of the services required, we would then obviously seek the intervention from the state attorney, or we use the database that's currently in the provincial treasury. Chair, on question 6, just important to note that once again on the capacity building partnership agreements, we're looking at already existing partnerships. That's the GCRO, CSIR, and UJ. And looking at the NQF level, those will obviously determine once the proposals are being submitted. And this is also work that we are undertaking with the policy and research unit, and the current financial implications for that study is about 500,000. Chair, the issue relating to viability assessments on the next slide. It's important for us to make sure that we put the necessary plans and processes in place, that we monitor municipalities, we conduct due diligence, and we can in advance detect if there will be municipalities with problems. And the 4 municipalities targeted in this regard is the Sedibeng district, Lesedi, Midvaal, and then also Mfuleni. So those would be the municipalities. Chair, in the past, we would often get requests, why not more municipalities? We need to identify the biggest risk in those municipalities and focus on those only based on the financial resources that we have. Chair, on the issue of community concerns on the next slide, there we deal with a multi-pronged approach. Once we get a call from a community, it's either our community development workers that deals with it, it's either the rapid response team in the office of the Premier that supports it, or we send our rapid response team in to go and look at what is actually the problem. These are tracked through the office of the Premier, the CRM system, and we do get regular feedback from the Premier's office in that regard, particularly if we don't respond in 48 hours, then the matter is then escalated. So we often deal with that on a case-by-case basis. So there is no specific time frame, but we try to resolve everything in at least 48 hours. And of course, if we don't get joy from the municipalities on the ground, we often deal with the speaker's offices, the municipal manager's offices, and where need, we ask the MEC for intervention. On the next page, Chairperson, just to note that the 6 business services that we are earmarked to be done is there's 2 in the Department of Social Development and there's 4 in the Department of Education. And then I think on the next slide, we're asking the question, some of the lessons that we have learned during this process. What we have found, Chairperson, is that sector departments in cooperation with the DID, they must make sure that they do their own due diligence. Who is the owner of the land? Because if that is not the owner of the land that they contracted with, it often delays various approvals, specifically the environmental impact assessment. And we also know that although we have engaged with GDAT, we had a process map where we can expedite environmental impact assessment results. A prerequisite for those is that you need to submit all the information, and particularly the information from the owner of the land. Chair, the next few questions, particularly from question 10 and 11, relates to the one, the metering system, and the other one relates to Merafong. So, of course, the online metering system that we are implementing is through a specialist service provider. And in the end, after a 3-year period, the custodian is the municipality. But what we do is we make sure that the service provider make and deploy specialist software so that we can monitor meter readings on a real-time basis. And that should avoid disputes when it comes to payment for services. And then in the end, there is a maintenance process built into the contract. So at the end, it's taken over by the municipality. So we don't just hand it over to the municipality. There's continuous support for that 3 years. But in the end, the municipality is the custodian and the municipality need to take responsibility. Chair, in terms of the Merafong disaster management, this is quite a multi-sectoral approach. It is led by the Provincial Disaster Management Center. We have established a disaster management site in Merafong, and the same applies to all the disasters. And with Merafong, because this has been coming on for a number of years, Chair, there was a need for us to deal with it in an integrated manner. Integrated means that all departments are part of the disaster management approach. All departments identify initiative that needs to be undertaken in the Hutsong Township. Most of the initiatives undertaken there is infrastructure related due to the problems that you have there. So all departments have submitted plans. We visit Merafong on a weekly basis. We track progress on a weekly basis. But of course, the communities are a bit concerned because the progress is taking a bit long. And most of the challenges that you have there, Chair, is infrastructure related. Some of the roads you can fix the potholes, but there's other roads that requires major rehabilitation and requires the appointment of a professional service provider. I can comfortably say these processes are underway. We have requested funding from the National Disaster Management Center to the tune of about 1.2 billion. Most of it relates to wet services and infrastructure delivery. But the directive to departments at this point is that the current available funds, current resources, particularly those that has regional offices and equipment, such as the Department of Roads and Transport, GDAT, and those, to utilize those equipment to assist whilst we're waiting for the approval of funding. Of course, the National Treasury and the National Disaster Management Center do conduct a due diligence process before funding is made available. And then also, Chair, some of the greater initiatives that we're looking at in the area is to look at an early detection system to deal with sinkholes. There is no such system that is currently available. So the Council of Geoscience working with us is looking at deploying a system to deal with it. And Chair, there was also a question on the 14 million that was allocated to the West Rand. The 14 million that was allocated to the West Rand was primarily to assist them with disaster management services, because as the West Rand, in the current disaster in Merafong, they need to support the process, and both the Merafong local municipality needs to support the process as well. And then, Chair, just the last question relates to the EPWP grant. Chair, this is a grant that is allocated at the exclusive discretion of the National Department of Public Works. Category C municipalities do get their grants directly from the department, and depending on what you have spent, depending on the initiatives that you undertake, that grant is then solely allocated at the discretion of the national department. And as COCTA, we're not a line function department, so what we do facilitate and we do monitor and evaluate the work that we are doing, and we support municipalities and then also working with other departments. So essentially, Chair, we coordinate, but the process is monitored by DID, and it's not necessarily they need to seek the approval of COCTA, but those allocations are made. Chair, just to share with you that whilst we are a month and a half into the new financial year, we believe that some of the lessons that we have learned in the previous financial year when it comes to underspending, that we are tracking us underspending already with a month and a half into the new financial year. We don't even wait for the end of the financial year. But Chair, this set of information from here is for information for the portfolio committee. We are not presenting it, but we're just sharing with the portfolio committee that the systems that we have agreed in the past to address underspending and to address performance in underperforming areas are currently being dealt with. Chairperson, that concludes our presentation and the questions and the responses to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honourable members, that was the provincial adjustment budget, as well as the questions we formulated last week that we've sent through to the department. I know we're still all over the place. Ms. Manga will be stepping back in. There's also an LSP meeting at the same time, and we're managing a number of different issues on our side, which we'll speak to it a bit later. But can I see if there's any honourable members who wish to ask any clarity-seeking questions or make any comments? Member Diaga, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the water losses, and when we talk about water and electricity losses, we just assume that municipalities are not doing their job, which is to a large extent their responsibility. But we need to also take cognizance of it, that we often, as politicians, we look for technical solutions when it comes to socioeconomic problems. What I mean by that is that municipalities inherited a backlog, infrastructure backlogs, and especially when it comes to areas that's never had services, electricity and water. And we know many areas never had. So municipalities now have to provide services to those areas, but what doesn't always follow is the correct allocation, in my opinion, that is at least the correct allocation for infrastructure development. We cannot expect let's use Johannesburg as an example, or Ekurhuleni, wherever we are. The metro cities get a large influx of people coming, looking for opportunities. And it's across the world, it's always like that. But I'm not sure that the municipalities receive their allocation in terms of from national, in terms of what must follow, or the capex that's required to do the necessary or provide the necessary services. The minister recently, and so that's just, the minister recently spoke Minister for Water and Sanitation spoke about an additional 28 billion rand over the next 5 years, which will be allocated to the building of reservoirs. Here's my thing on it, MC. As much as we need more reservoirs, the problem is not necessarily capacity. The problem is around water losses. And here you look at a place like, for instance, Roodepoort, Roodepoort has far than and more than enough reservoirs. The problem in a place like Roodepoort relates to AC pipes, old asbestos pipes. Those pipes, and we're going to see it now during winter, they're going to pop like nobody's business. The pipes are old, they can no longer handle the pressure, and we need to, from a COCTA perspective, we can play a large role in making sure that municipalities receive rather more funding that can be managed and somehow managed by COCTA, by the department, to be sure that it gets spent correctly in the replacement of these pipes. And we have the same problem with electricity. As much as we're trying to provide the electricity to informal settlements, what we need to remember is that that money must come from somewhere. And municipalities just don't have the funding to do the upgrades of informal settlements on their own. Whether it's on council land, on provincial land, at the end of the day, the problem is that people don't have access to services. I think also MEC, and we often see that we play politics, and I've also been in government. I know we all play politics as politicians. We play politics with the lives of people. The function of a municipality is, in my opinion, again, the core function of a municipality is their mandate is about providing services. And that is economic drivers, water, electricity, sewer. That should be our main focus, not the building of a football field or a recreation center, because guess what? Unless we have water to look after that recreation center or football field, what's the point of building it? So our core function should first and the municipality should be to provide those necessary services. And in the absence of those services, everything else we're doing is just throwing money away. So I really want to appeal to you, MEC, that from a COCTA point of view, that we play a far more active role in ensuring that municipalities deliver on their mandate, which is to provide the necessary economic drivers that can bring us the economic growth, and especially around water and electricity. I live in an area that had a electricity outage for 54 hours, and 54 hours we had 6 hours of load shedding, of no electricity, and it is a large area affected. I tried to engage with Eskom. City Power tried to engage with Eskom. It was like bumping your head against a brick wall. There was just no understanding of the problem. Now, I'm not a master's degree civil engineer, but the problem is obvious. The batteries at the substations do not have time to recharge, and therefore it will continuously trip. So it's a blackout waiting to happen. And we saw that for 54 hours, 6 hours of electricity, and it took a novice like me to tell them what to do. And it cannot be. We need to be far more active as provincial government in assisting municipalities. And I'm really, when I say this, I'm not playing political games with this. If you know me well enough, you will know that, I play theatre in the house, but I don't exactly play theatre when it comes to the lives of people. And I feel the pain of everybody. So just in terms of that, if we can look at that, then also that will then tie in with the disaster infrastructure rather master plan. We need to have a better understanding of provincially of a provincially the master plan that's required. So we need to know what every municipalities where their shortcomings are. We need to have it on our database. Every single problematic substation, whether it's on provincial land or on municipal land, we need to know where those substations are. We need to understand the problematic pump stations. We need to understand that every time there's a power outage, there's sewer that will flow into a river because the pump stations will go down. That AC batteries that's supposed to run idle in the absence of electricity will not charge if there's a 4-hour outage and it takes 4 hours for it to come back on for whatever trip there might be, etc., etc. It's a ripple effect. And we have a role to play. We need to know where those weaknesses are. And we can only know that if we have a very comprehensive master plan. And when you see, then also, I love all the interventions when it comes to public safety. Panic button is fantastic. If everybody can have it and we can deal with it, it is fantastic. But all of it will mean absolutely nothing if we cannot have our police stations equipped with Wi-Fi. I visited as part of a Crime Watch campaign, tried to visit with the security, public safety committee, tried to visit as many police stations as possible. I managed to do about 31 stations, and not a single police station had Wi-Fi or even proper telephonic communication with the outside world. They often use their own cell phones, private cell phones, to even take something like a picture of a suspect. So it cannot be that we put these fantastic plans in place, but the basics are lacking. So can we just please make sure? And I said that at the time in public safety, I said, can we just look at private institutions to at least then come in to assist in these substations? So that's my contribution. But key and foremost, and I have a good friend in City Power, he was CEO of City Power, Lerato Zitsedi, and he always used to say to me, stop looking for technical solutions for socio-economic problems, which is what we're doing, and it's never, ever going to work. Can we just do the basics? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Tiaga. Any other members? Member Nure, over to you.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, and thanks, MEC and HOD and Tim. On coalitions, I think this committee should also be privy in terms of your strategy to try and bring stability. Today, it's Tshwane, it's Josie, it's Mhale, and it's just a cycle that is run around, and it is the people on the ground that are suffering. You can see sewer, boat holes where you can even swim, grass cutting, the grass is like this, tall as myself. So it is a cause for concern. We will also request that whatever you are developing, share with us, because we are serving in this committee and things are falling apart also. Whilst we are watching, we know it's not easy also to deal with coalition. I mean, that I've been to more than 4 countries which had coalition, and they will tell us before we could come into this, say it is not a good thing. You come in being driven and those things, 2 hours after the sitting, you are no longer serving in that position. So I'm not sure in terms of what is your timeline, though we know it's not easy to resolve and make people to agree if they don't have common purpose. But there are countries which are having lessons in terms of how do you arrive at the common purpose, that all the parties are sharing one purpose in terms of the objectives of them co-governing. The other one is on civic education. I'm not sure whether it goes together with voter education or what. But voter education also is to educate the citizens about their rights and responsibilities, which also I can also locate the civic education in terms of the culture that is it's at a very high level of unacceptability in terms of destruction of infrastructure.
there is also maybe one day we'll see the bridges falling. If at Selby, the highway there, when they're digging, there's the big holes that are there under the bridges. So what it means, one day there's going to be disaster. So the question of it's not going to be easy. It's not easy also to educate, but other countries are succeeding when after liberation, citizens like when they see that maybe this freedom is not benefiting them, then they start destroying. But with this one, I doubt that it is. There's something that's driving them, which we need jointly to also engage in that civic education. Let me go to the municipalities that you are assisting. In my previous portfolio, it was human settlement and local government. And the then MEC will tell us that he has deployed officials to different municipalities where there are red flags and challenges. And those officials, when they reported to the portfolio, they will indicate challenges to say there are barriers which they can't cross because the council must take a decision or there is resistance from the officials that are supposedly to be assisted. So I don't know your strategy in terms of mediating the resistance and all those things that makes them not improve, even if there are those officials, and also there are what you call this, this the word that they advise them consultants. Even if they are consultants, you still experience those problems. So your strategy must try and deal with that. On the climate change, we've seen a lot of impact of climate change in Gauteng. We saw them in KZN and they immediately came to us. As we speak, some of the roads are still closed. You can't drive there, you can't go there, and it has a lot of impact to the people, and they're starting to complain. To say, we also had the declaration by the minister and the MEC in terms of the state of national disaster or whatever it was, but situations are still like that. We are not sure in terms of how soon will that commitment by national and yourselves in terms of trying to correct or maybe rebuild those roads and those houses. I don't know whether I didn't go through in terms of the measures that are to be put in place there. But when I met with the Minister of Human Settlement in March, she indicated that we can't come in because the municipalities, those relevant municipalities, they have not taken a council decision. So hence the delay. So I'm not sure whether it's still like that and whether they've taken the decision so that national then comes in. Then said, come April, they'll just come in as national because there is that delay coming from the municipalities. Maybe from your side, maybe there is a progress in relation to that. On water, we are now experiencing challenges. We met with Water last time. Um, they did not, yes, there were the leakages, they have been reporting about the water leakages. But what I've observed also in town, just not far from where we are, where there's old, old post office, there's a lot of water spillage there, which has been there. I mean, even yesterday I saw it. And I was saying it's not even far from us as the legislature. It's doing this. You go with Market Street, there is that water spillages that doesn't get to be addressed. So it's not there only, it's all over. So I don't know, in terms of, because it affects and impacts on the capacity of the water supply. On the bursaries, yes, you said research, but what I would ask is the question of their impact when they've graduated, whether they do assist the province, let me say that. Maybe also see that there's placement after all those expenditure, and also following them through their studies until they qualify. Do you have that strategy, or they just disappear after qualification? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Member Malema?
Thank you once more, Honorable Chair. Let me take you from my colleagues in welcoming the representations made. One, the opening remarks on APP targets by the MEC, budget presentation by both HOD and the SCFO. And also the answers that were provided to the questions that we posed to the department. We welcome those answers, but safe to say that we'll still have to digest on the implications, or rather, yes, the implications of those answers, and to a certain extent, then subsequently, if there will be a need for us to further engage on that, we will still want to have your indulgence on that, through you, Honorable Chair. Having said that, Honorable Chair, I think it is precisely appropriate that we should make a disclaimer that it is not a considered view of this committee to say you're playing politics with the lives of our people there. But I want to agree with the two honorable members that rudimentary services like water provisions should not be compromised. It's very important. I think it's at the center of the lives of our constituents, communities. You need to up the game when it comes to that. You should assist the municipalities in making sure that there is proper water provisions and there is quality water being provided to our people there. Honorable MEC. I want to agree with Honorable Ngube that it will be proper for you to have a strategy on how to deal with the coalition governments. I know you have mentioned that there is a study commissioned, and you'll make that to be available. Maybe I should also check as to when can we possibly have that made available to us. It's very important. But beyond that, I think you need to develop a strategy on how to deal with this ongoing instability as a direct ramification of the coalitions or the disputes or disagreements in coalition negotiations. We'll appreciate if you can be able to have some sort of a process plan on how you're going to deal with it. The other thing is that I think it is important that in the midst or amid the instability that is going on as a direct ramification of these coalitions, I think you still carry with yourself a responsibility of ensuring that the socio-economic interest of the constituent communities in those respective municipalities are not compromised. Services still have to be rendered to our people. So maybe that would also perhaps form part of the process plan, if not the strategy that you're most likely to develop going forward. You said something about the capacitation of the ward committees, and I think in 9 municipalities as opposed to 11 municipalities. I don't know what informs that. Maybe first part of my question would be, do we have ward committees established in all the municipalities within the province? And if we're saying we're going to capacitate what committees, 9 municipalities. Why nine? Why in 9 municipalities instead of 11 municipalities? Maybe I missed a point there. But yes, I think that's it from me. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Malema. I think from me, I'm okay because we submitted a lot of our questions last week, where I also had an interest in a lot of those were responded to. MEC, let me hand over to you an HOD response.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks for this question. My colleagues from the department to answer some of these questions. I will attempt to deal with some of the issues that have been raised, particularly as it relates to the support that we have to give to the municipalities and the strategy thereof. I agree that we need to focus municipalities on what their key mandates are and ensure that municipalities focuses on those particular mandates, that we eliminate anything that is called unfunded mandates, because sometimes we force municipalities to implement unfunded mandates. And I think experiences is around issues of library, issues of clinics, and so on, because provincial government would build a structure and there's an expectation that the municipality must capacitate that, and only to find that it's an unfunded mandate. And sometimes because they don't want this structure